All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Center for Economic Empowerment at Love Zion for another one of our monthly installments. This month, we are talking about the interview process, and we have a special guest with us, Kiarrah Newsome, who I will introduce formally later. But we're so lucky and privileged to have her with us to talk about the do's and don'ts for the job that you want. Understanding that while there are so many job opportunities available, there are definitely some things that are stopping us from getting the jobs that we want to secure. And there are definitely some tips that she can give us on how to secure these positions by nailing our interview. So as we are getting started, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box, share with us who you are and where you're from, as well as please feel free to use the chat box to ask any questions or provide any comments or details as we go throughout. Here are just a few norms that we would love for you guys to adhere to while we are in this webinar. One, we have muted everyone's microphones just to avoid any background noise, but at any time you have any questions or would like to participate, feel free to unmute yourself. Also, as I said before, feel free to use the chat box, raise hand feature, or anything to get our attention. To add any comments, questions, thoughts, or any helpful or useful resources as we're going through the workshop. I'll be keeping my eye on the chat and letting Kiarrah know if there are any questions that pop up as we go through this process. Also, your cameras are welcome. As we all know, some of us have not seen outside faces for a really long time. So it's nice to see everyone smile and to vibe off of your energy. But if unfortunately you aren't able to show your face, we completely understand. Make use of that chat box just so that we know you're here and that you're engaging with us. So this workshop is being brought to you by the Center for Economic Empowerment at Love Zion. Just to give you a little information about who we are, the Center for Economic Empowerment at Love Zion was founded at the start of 2020, end of 2019, really aimed to provide resources, training, or as many opportunities as possible to really encourage the long-term economic freedom and empowerment for the residents of North Philadelphia and the greater Philadelphia area. We launched the Center for Economic Empowerment at the start of 2020 with a Secure in the Bag 2020 mini conference series of workshops and have continued that work with these monthly webinar series. For more information about who we are, feel free to visit our website. Follow us on Facebook and definitely visit our YouTube page where you can find all of the videos from this series. And if there are anything that you're interested in as far as topics that you would like us to cover, resources that you desire, or a personal connection that you would like to make, feel free to send us an email at lovezioncee@gmail.com. I'll be posting this information in the chat box for you, so you can feel free to click on these links, follow us, like us, contact us, but stay in touch. And I'll also let you know a little bit later on about how you can continue to join us for this webinar series and what the next topic we will cover. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest speaker for today. It's truly an honor to have Kiarrah here because we actually grew up kind of together. We spent our middle school and high school years together. So we are 100% familiar with each other. So when this topic came up, I literally immediately thought of her because she has been so awesome and has been really making her way through resource management, and I just love it. So just to give you a little bit more information about who this is, Kiarrah Newsome is the Regional Human Resource Manager for Browns Superstore Incorporated, a supermarket chain that owns and operates 10 ShopRites and 2 Fresh Grocer stores within the Philadelphia area. She is in charge of the hiring, training, and development for the 3 stores, the ShopRite of Cheltenham, of East Norristown, and the Fresh Grocer of Wincott. Kiarrah received her HR certification through Rutgers University and is now working to be certified through the Society of Human Resource Management. She interviews between 20 to 25 people each week and has hired over 500 people within her 7-year career in HR, some of which went on to become managers themselves. She was trusted to be the lead HR in the hiring of the Fresh Grocer of Wincott in Monument Road during their grand openings. She is a dedicated worker with 13 years of within the same company that she started working in high school and is the youngest regional manager in her department. So again, as you can see from this brief bio that I read, she has a lot of experience with interviewing and definitely has the expertise to share on with us what are the do's and don'ts of really having a successful interview and being able to nail that interview for the job that we really want. So with that being said, I am going to now turn it over to Kiarrah, who will give us those tips and tricks.
Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me this evening. I am honored. So like she said in my introduction, I've been doing human resources for now 7 years total. I became a regional HR manager 2 years ago in 2018. So that put me in charge of 3 different stores in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. So I get to interview different types of people, you know, all across Montgomery County. And it's just interesting for me to see different personalities on a daily basis. So today, I just want to talk about the do's and don'ts of interviewing, what could land you your job, and what could, you know, maybe hurt you from getting employed at a location. So there's different types of interviews. There's the in-person interview, the phone interview, and now with COVID, there's a lot of Zoom interviews now, so video calls, stuff like that. So the majority of the interviews are done in person. So I always say you should arrive early. So you should be at least 15 minutes early when you're coming in for an interview. That's the first thing that I notice when I am interviewing someone, because it lets me know if they're respectful of time and if they're going to have good attendance, you know. So early is on time, and on time is late. I really do believe that. So when you arrive, you're 15 minutes early once we bring you in. I just want to talk about your dress attire because, again, we are looking at everything. So when you're in the in-person interview, you want to make sure you dress, you know, business casual. I'm not saying you have to dress up in a suit or tie, depending on what company you're working for. But most businesses, you can't go wrong with a button-up shirt and some black slacks. You know, something simple. And then you want to just make sure you have a firm handshake. And then you always want to make eye contact, okay? And just make sure you have good posture. So if you're on a Zoom meeting or a Zoom interview, I should say, you want to make sure you go to a quiet place and make sure there's no distractions in your background. Okay, very, very important. And again, you do still want to dress for the occasion, so you do want to make sure you have like a button-up shirt or a sweater or something like that. Okay? And if you're sitting down, the bottoms don't really matter, but you just want to make sure you look good from the stomach up. So once you are actually in the interview, once we're asking you questions, you want to make sure this is a time that you really get to sell yourself. An interview is a conversation that you're having with someone, and it's to get you a job. This is really a time just to, you know, put forth your best efforts. You want to make sure you're really just promoting yourself and being your best advocate. So I always suggest to do some research on the company. You should always have some background knowledge and do your homework. That really impresses me as an HR manager because it shows me that you took the effort and you took time to research the company. And then you want to just make sure when we're asking you questions, you answer to the best of your ability. It's okay to ask the interviewer to rephrase the question. That's perfectly fine. And it's also okay to take a moment to yourself just to think about the questions that they're asking you as well. You know, we're not rushing you. We want you to make sure you're, you know, answering to the best of your ability. And it's okay, just to FYI, before you go on an interview, it is okay to Google answers to an interview question. I would rather you do that so you can have something under your belt, so you can be prepared, okay? You don't know that you're Googling answers before your interview. It's okay. And I do also suggest maybe having a friend or a family member do a mock interview with you. That way you can get comfortable interviewing. And just be confident, you know? Like I said, the interview is a conversation about yourself and your job experience and your abilities. So just be confident. Even if you're nervous, fake it, okay? Interviews don't normally last too long. average between 15, 20 minutes, give or take. So it's just a time for you just to kind of just put on that best effort and just be confident in what you're saying, okay? And I do suggest if you are interviewing, I do like when people have resumes. It's okay if you don't, but resumes are really, really good because, again, it just shows me that you're a professional. You took the time to really, like, work on your skills, and, you know, we just, like, I love resumes because it really shows me all of your experience. Now, if you do have a resume, I do suggest your resume not being, like, 2 to 3 pages long. 2 pages max. I would say 2 pages max, especially if you have a long, like a long length of experience. But just make sure they are not at least like 3 to 4 pages. That's too long, and honestly, the interviewer is not going to read all of it. Okay, just so that's why I do skim. I'm not going to say I don't read it. I do skim. But if it's past the 2nd page, I'm like, okay, this is a lot. All right. So on your resume, you want to make sure you have a professional email. Okay. It's lovely to have the baby girl 1, 2, 3s, but you want to make sure you have something with your first and last name, or maybe your initials or something like that. So just make sure it's a professional email. You can get an email for free from Gmail, Yahoo. You know, there's so many different emails that you can get for free of charge. Okay. And then it is okay when you're interviewing if you need to take a break, maybe like if you want to take a sip of water or something like that to calm down your nerves, it's perfectly fine. And just remember, when you are interviewing with somebody, you know, the interviewer might be nervous too. Like, I always tell people when they're nervous, like, I don't know you, you don't know me. I'm just as nervous as you. I don't know how this interview is going to be. So just be yourself. You know, just honestly, just be yourself. And then once we ask you if you have any questions, please have questions. It's really appreciated, and it really shows that you're interested in, you know, what's going on. So I always say have at least 3 questions to ask, and make sure your questions are open-ended questions and it pertains to the job. Please refrain from asking personal questions about the interviewer's life or something like that. Just make sure they're standard, you know, professional questions. I actually jotted some down. Like, you can ask about what's the next steps in the hiring process, or you can ask, like, when you'll be expecting a phone call. Those types of questions are great. Or anything pertaining to the job or the company. That's pretty good. Okay. And then I have some don'ts. So I always say never talk about your personal issues or like your health condition. I'm not, as an interviewer, I can't know that information. We never want to discriminate or not hire somebody because they said something that may hinder them from working. So try to refrain from saying personal issues or anything regarding your health. So keep that all, you know, kind of to yourself. Even like if a person is like 5 months pregnant, you don't have to mention it in the interview, okay? Because if you do, as an HR manager, we just kind of have to ignore what you said or act like we can't hear it, and I won't even acknowledge that you said it. Because legally I can't. I'm not supposed to know. Just an FYI. Now, if you're having a phone interview, just please be prepared. Right now, I'm doing a lot of phone interviews because of COVID-19. And sometimes it's a little difficult to do phone interviews because there's a lot of chatter in the background, or maybe the person wasn't, you know, ready for the interview. I typically, right now, I schedule phone interviews, and what I do, I call the person at the time that I schedule them. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get through the phone interview because there's a lot of background noise, or maybe they're outside, or maybe they just weren't prepared. Like, I actually had somebody, I scheduled an interview around 10 a.m. the other day, and it just sounded like they just woke up. You know, so you just want to make sure you are prepared. Although you are at home, it is still an interview, and I'm still trying to get to know you to see what type of worker you're going to be. So you don't want to appear to be lazy You want to make sure you have a good tone of voice when you're talking over the phone. Again, you're just trying to sell yourself, okay? And then you don't want to, when you're interviewing, you don't want to come off as being desperate, and try not to beg. Like, I understand that everyone wants a job, and when you're interviewing, obviously it's because you need work, okay? So we do understand that. Just try your best not to seem desperate when you're interviewing, or, you know, just begging for the job, you know. But I've had that happen a lot, and although some people it didn't hinder them, but then there's others that it did, you know, because it was just too much, you know. And try your hardest not to cry or sob like during the interview as well. Again, we don't want to be biased. We don't want to make someone like so guilty and they have to hire you because you're crying. You just want to make sure you handle all of that before you go into the interview. Very important. And then once you're done interviewing, it is okay to follow up. I love when people follow up. I work for 3 different stores, so I interview between 20 and 25 people each week. And sometimes I am busy, so interviewing is not my main job, so I might have some other things to do. So sometimes I may slip and I might forget to call right away, or the time that I say I may call. It's okay to follow up. It's perfectly fine if you want to do a follow-up phone call, or if you want to do a follow-up email, that's perfectly fine. But following up is one thing, but you don't want to become, I guess, a nuisance. So you don't want to, again, come off as desperate. So sometimes I have people that call like back-to-back every single day asking me if they got the job or not, which I get your phone calls. You don't have to call every day. Maybe like once a week if we don't, you know, hear back or something like that. But I do suggest, like, if it's been more than like maybe 2 weeks, then it may not be a good sign. Okay. And also, if you are following up, just be leery of the voicemails that you leave. Again, you just want to be professional when you're leaving a voicemail, and you don't want to leave like a rude sounding voicemail. You know, if the person's not getting back to you right away, you don't want to sound angry about it. Okay. And also, when you're doing an interview, please make sure you're not chewing gum. Okay, no gum, no mints. That all should be taken care of before the interview process. Chewing gum is a distraction, and try to have your phones on vibrate or silent, please. Having your phones ringing during the interview just shows that you aren't prepared. And it's also a distraction for me as well. And then once you're interviewing, you don't want to speak poorly about your previous employer. Of course, you're not there for a reason. You know, obviously, we know that. But you don't want to bring up an old history that you had with another employer that left you a little bitter about the situation. When we're asking you your work experience or your past experience, like I'll ask, you know, what made you leave your current or your former employer, or what makes you want to leave your current employer or something like that. You don't want to bash the boss. You don't want to bash the store, the company that you were working for or you're working in, okay? Just give like a generic or general or overview of what happened, or you never want to incriminate yourself. I had an interview a couple weeks back, and the young lady told me that she left her current employer, or she was leaving her current employer because she was tired of them writing her up for being late every day. So that right there just told me that you have an attendance issue and you're late. So you don't want to do anything like that that will incriminate you and that will hinder you from getting the job. Okay, you can always say, looking for a different opportunity, looking to grow within a company, something like that, all right? And then once you're interviewing, you don't want to speak over the interviewer. You want to make sure that you're actively listening to what the person's asking you. You don't want to overtalk that person. And when you're answering questions, I love elaborate answers, but you don't want to be too elaborate with your answers. So just be respectful of time and be respectful of the interviewer's time and also your time. You don't want to have an interview that lasts like 2 hours long, okay? But yes, I do want you to answer the questions with more than just one word. Of course, again, elaborate. That's perfectly fine. But just try your best not to take up too much time with your answers. Okay. Because you want the person to listen to you. You don't want us to start daydreaming. All right. And then once you are once you are in the interview, once you have your resume, once you hand the interviewer your resume, you want to make sure you have enough copies. I've had people give me resumes and it was their last one, and they asked me to make a copy of it. That's not the interviewer's responsibility. That's your responsibility. So if that's your last copy, maybe don't even give them the resume, okay? But try your best to have enough copies of your resume so you can avoid doing that. And I have a lot of people that ask me, is it okay to bring up salary during the interview? I get a little weird about that question. If salary is the main goal, obviously salary is important. But if salary is what you're really looking for to make a decision, I always just suggest maybe bringing it up before you even get an interview. Once the interviewer calls you or emails you, if you want to reach out, or actually do your research. Once you do your research, you kind of get a general idea of what the salary is. But I just say, if you are that person that's really into what's the salary and you need to know right then and there, ask it up front before the interview because you don't want to waste each other's time. Okay. But do it in a professional way. Don't just come out and say, what's the pay or what are you guys starting off with? It's just all on how you word things. It's very important. But the most important thing, like I said, is be yourself. Make sure you do your research, have a firm handshake, and just make eye contact. Okay, and just try your best to answer the questions. And if it's something you don't know, ask them to rephrase it, and it's okay. All right. But again, I just want you guys to make sure that you're not just chewing gum or even having an attitude. When you come in, just watch your tone of voice as well. Sometimes people might have a sarcastic tone or they're joking. It's okay to make a little joke in an interview, but you don't want to joke too much, because you want the person to take you seriously as well. Right? Is there any questions so far? Is there any questions?
Yeah, definitely open the floor up to questions. I have some questions, Kiarrah, because I have done some interviews myself, and there's always something that comes up that becomes a red flag for me, whether it's on the resume or in the interview itself. Are there some really glaring red flags that you come across often that's every time you see it, you're no, okay, we gotta stop?
Well, I always on a resume, I see, hold on a second. Sorry, guys. So if a person has a lot of jobs, that's kind of a red flag for me. If I see that they've had 10 jobs within 2 years, that's a red flag, because that shows that you haven't had a steady, consistent job, or you leave your job often and maybe you get fired very quickly. So that's a red flag, definitely.
And what about when selling yourself? Because there's this thin line between selling yourself and becoming super arrogant and obnoxious.
Yes. So that's really good. That's a good question. So you don't want to be arrogant or cocky, I should say. So I've had that as well. I've had people that come in and they just look arrogant, or they seem arrogant when they're talking. So again, you want to be confident but not arrogant. You want to be humble. You don't want to you want to brag, but in a humble way, just humble bragging, but you don't want to think that, you're better than the job, or oh, I'm just taking this job just because I just need money, but, I'm not going to last long, or I'm not going to stay long, so you just want to be a humble bragger, if that makes sense.
That's an art frame. We need to, the next workshop needs to be a humble bragging. It's so hard to find that balance. Even when I still do it, when I'm going for interviews, it's you want to give enough about yourself, but you don't want to come off as being all about you and things like that. So that's true.
That's true. That's true. So I've had that. Actually, that's so funny because I actually had somebody a couple weeks back, and I did not hire him because honestly, I thought he was a little arrogant with his answers, and he thought he was better than the job, you know. But in my mind, I'm like, well, you're coming to me for a job, so let's humble ourselves a little bit because obviously you need a job. But he was very his arrogance came off as rude to me a little bit, you know. It was a little rude, and it just kind of turned me off on that. So he had no balance at all.
All right. Well, I think you've given us a lot of information. So one, thank you so much, Kiarrah, on behalf of the Center for Economic Empowerment, all of our participants, and just everyone who will be able to glean anything from this workshop on our social media pages. Just sincerely thanking you for bringing all of your expertise here. Interviewing can be a very anxiety ridden process for people who are going through it, and you know, with everything that's going on, there's a lot on our minds and a lot on our plates. And so hopefully these tips that you've provided us today will definitely help somebody feel more comfortable, more prepared, more confident going into their next interview, so that they feel like they can really nail that and secure that position that they need in order to reach those financial goals. So thank you so much. We truly you, and hopefully at some point, probably in January when we're doing our next big workshop, we can have you come back and really give us some more tips, or you know, run mock interviews or something like that. So we definitely hope to have you back at some point.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, for all of those who are viewing, one of the resources that we just compiled together in light of this is to just provide you with a list of a couple places that are hiring in the Philadelphia area. This was just based off of my research. I just took the time to do, because sometimes that's really hard, is just finding the time to research areas that are seeking opportunities for people to apply to. So I just took a little bit of my time just to go through and try to isolate some of those areas. But one thing I want to point out is that there's definitely a lot available during this time. I know that with COVID, a lot of people are talking about being released from work, but there are a lot of unique opportunities that have presented themselves because of COVID-19, especially with like the city of Philadelphia and all their different avenues. They have a lot to offer as far as unique projects that they're running, grants that they've been given in order to produce certain products or results as a result of COVID-19. And of course, just everyday positions with Browns Superstores and all the stores that they have, as well as other retail places, banks, a lot of people looking for customer care and human resources that I've seen. And one thing that I want to point out is that if people haven't been on Indeed.com or LinkedIn, please do so. I was one of the people who didn't realize how important and useful LinkedIn could be. And then once I got on LinkedIn and started to see all that was available, I wasn't even looking for job, and job opportunities were coming my way, and just by being part of that LinkedIn community. So I definitely now understand that it's very useful. So I am going to share a link to this document where you can just click on the different links that will allow you to go to those websites and look through those job opportunities or resource pages. We're also going to produce this page along with the video of this workshop so that you have it in reference, have it to reference along with the actual video from this workshop.
Just going to say one other thing.
Go ahead, Deacon Nelson.
Yes. Also, there's a virtual, and we feature this on our webpage as well. There's a virtual one-stop job and resource fair, hub fair, that's being sponsored by the district attorney's office every month for virtual jobs. And it was one just preceding our webinar, which I tried to get people involved and notified that there was a job fair prior to this webinar, that they can get both interview and techniques on how to interview. But every month, I think it's the first Thursday of the month, the district attorney's office is sponsoring a virtual job and resource fair, which we will feature on our webpage monthly, just for information.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I do want to spotlight our next webinar that will be coming up next month on September 3rd, again, Thursday at 7:00 p.m. It's all about the side hustles, how to secure alternative sources of income. And this is a big deal because sometimes your primary job just isn't getting you to those financial goals quick enough or effectively enough. And we want to make sure not only do you have that steady income coming in by nailing the interview that you just went in for and securing that job, but we also want to discuss how you can take advantage of having other alternative sources of income to really supplement your goals, your everyday life. So we have one of our Renaissance women that we know and love dearly, Miss Taisha Jett. She is going to be coming in and giving us her tips and tricks and all of the information that she has. I call her the side hustle queen because as long as I've known this woman, she has had multiple, sometimes 3 and 4 jobs that she has been able to handle to really help secure all of her financial goals. So she is going to be sharing with us how she does that and how she makes it look so easy with the rest of us so that we can also partake in that as well. So feel free to register for that event at sidehustlewebinar.eventbrite.com. And we hope to see you there next month. All right, so as we close out, again, we would love for you to stay connected with us. Feel free to visit our website at lovezion.org/CEE. Follow us on Facebook at CEE at Love Zion. That is where you can find this video as well as the resources that we've talked about in this video. You will find them and you will continue to find resources uploaded, whether it's job opportunities, grant information, or any other information that we think will be helpful to someone in our community. Follow or subscribe to our YouTube page where again you can see all of our past webinars, and feel free to reach out to us directly at lovezioncee@gmail.com. Let us know if there are any topics you would love for us to cover, any information or resources that you need, and we would love to connect with you and do the best we can to support you in that. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody once again for showing up and for viewing this, whether you're live with us now or viewing this on one of our social media pages. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. And we look forward to seeing you again next month and very soon. So thank you again, everyone.